Hello. Welcome to another edition of Eddie G's World. This is the May 8th, 2018 edition, and we are going to have a little fun with discussing. Well, it's my world, so whatever appeals to me may appeal to others too. This is my goal. I have a lot to say about different music, opinions, discussions are only me right now. So I'm talking to myself, and if anyone's listening, that would be unbelievably great to know. So this week, it's going down the list of the top 500 songs of Rolling Stones. Just giving my opinion, talking about the songs. It's just a list. It doesn't mean it's really means anything as far as whatever music you like or don't like. It's music that they think is the greatest. It's just a way to discuss it. And I know little bits and pieces of stories about songs, so if I have something to say, I will say it. And if I don't know the song that well or have no opinion, I'll just mention it and we'll keep moving. Number 500, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, Shop Around. This was a song by an up-and-coming band from, obviously, Motown years. Smokey Robinson went on to become vice president, I believe, of Motown later on. This was covered also by Captain and Tennille later on in their career in the 70s. And it was a great story song and well written. I believe Smokey wrote it. No, Berry Gordy and Smokey wrote it. So that was a good way to start the list off. It's with a great song from the Miracles from 1960, I believe. Yes, it was. And it was a cover. No, it wasn't a cover. They were the original band to do it. So we'll move on to the next song, a little bit more modern tune. It's by Weezer. The song was called Buddy Holly. I remember it being this like catchy little beat with a great video where they showed Al from Happy Days dancing around. And I don't know, Weezer became a pretty big band based on this. They had 2 or 3 other songs later on. They're still around. And this song was very fun tune to hear on the radio back in the day, mid-90s is my memory. And here, a little fact, it was produced by Rick Ocasek from The Cars, who's getting a divorce currently and has also been put in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with The Cars a couple of weeks ago. Okay, that's $4.99. $4.98. Miss You by the Rolling Stones. Well, I mean, I really like the song. And it came out when I was 18 years old. And it's hard to, like, when it comes to ranking, there's really no point in saying that it should be 492 or 273. It means nothing. It's just these people giving me content to discuss. So my point to make about the Rolling Stones song Miss You is I do remember it well. It was great. I loved hearing it on the radio when it came on. They have 50 other hits that are also great too. But it deserves to be on the list, so we'll just keep going and see if there's any other interesting songs. The Rising by Bruce Springsteen, 497. Now, this was a song that came out after 9/11. And there was a big excitement about it because it was, discussing the horrible tragedy in New York. So, okay, why not? It's kind of worth mentioning and putting on the list. Show that Bruce cared about the tragedy. So, why not throw it in? It's worthy of being in the top 500. And now we're going to move on to 496. Let's see. I'm looking at this list, by the way, for the first time. I'm not preparing a major show. I'm just telling you, as I see the songs, I usually know little stories about the group or the artist, and I'll tell you them, and I'll tell you whatever I think is appropriate. Jackson Browne, number 496, Running on Empty. Very catchy song. Jackson Browne, I almost saw him live a couple of times. He's come to Montreal, and I've been tempted to go see him. Great talent. I knew he was married to, can't remember her name, the tall blonde actress. Oh, Daryl Hannah. he wrote this song, came out when 41 years ago. That's quite a long time ago. And I think it was a story about his experiences touring around the U.S. and discussing all the experiences he had. And it's a good song and has a bit of a theme to it, which I like. Back on the trail to the next song, 495, the Rolling Stones, Brown Sugar. Well, I don't know, is it insulting to throw the Rolling Stones at the bottom of the list? Or is it complimentary to put them in at all? I mean, I'm trying to get into the mindset of the people creating this list. Not that I like these lists, but, this is a song that you would think would be more popular than being towards the bottom, but it sounds like a song about black girls. It was not probably it was well received as a great song. It was a #1 hit, if I remember, but it was kind of a little controversial in the topic for the 70s. April 1971, they were pretty groundbreaking and bringing up songs that are a bit controversial at the time. Move on to another song. Let's see. It's all a mystery to me. I don't know what the next one will be. It's exciting. R. Kelly, Ignition. Okay, here's a guy who has had a lot of songs that are popular, and he's currently in the news a lot because not only was he accused of having sex with underage girls a few years ago, and he was cleared of charges because they couldn't be sure that the girl was underage. That was in the video. It wasn't clear. He's also in the news again for having women in apartments that he's paying for to be sex slaves. So this guy's got a smooth voice. I mean, I don't know his music so well that I can actually have a lot to say about how much I like or dislike R. Kelly. He's a guy that has done music that is smooth soul type of stuff, and it's okay. It's good, but it doesn't connect much with me. So I don't have a lot to say about the actual liking or disliking of the song, which is called Ignition. It's a remix, and it's from about 16 years ago. Okay, down the list, MGMT, Time to Pretend. Now, I know management only because I remember seeing that they were on the Billboard charts a few years ago and saying to myself, why is it I don't know any of their music? So what I did was I went on YouTube and I looked them up, and they were 3 or 4 songs which I kind of liked. They even came to Montreal, but nobody wanted to go with me to see them. But I remember liking the songs, and I don't know which one this is, if I've heard this or not. It's not really that important. I just know that I like the style of the group, but I'm like at a loss for going into detail about what this particular song is like, but it's probably not bad. Here's a great song from the 70s. Gloria Gaynor at number 492. I Will Survive. That was an upbeat dance tune. I know it stands out in my memory because the movie about Andy Kaufman, they have Andy Kaufman's alter ego. They got it dressed up like Andy Kaufman doing a bit of a parody of this song. But this was good. I mean, she's had 2 or 3 other hits since then. And she's kind of had a pretty good career, although you don't hear as much about her anymore as you used to, because she's, the dance phase has kind of come and gone, and she's probably a woman. My guess is close to 70, so she's not likely to be coming out with songs that you hear a lot on the radio anymore. But this one was a keeper. It was an upbeat song, women's power. I liked it. Next, a woman that's coming to town in about 3 months. I've already seen her live, and when I did see her live, I did kind of rub her leg a little bit, but she didn't, luckily, smash me in the head with her guitar. It's Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. I love rock and roll. Classic rock song from those days. The great story about this is the writers, Jake Hooker and Alan Merrill. I think they were kind of, they had come out with this song and nobody wanted it. There was a whole dramatic story about how Joan Jett and the Blackhearts got famous. They kind of had to stick to their guns, and record companies rejected them, and they had to put it on their own record label because nobody wanted it. And it's just one of these great stories how Yeah, it says that it was rejected by 23 record labels. So imagine they had a multi-million selling record that nobody wanted, but they eventually got it on a record label, Boardwalk, and made a big hit out of it. And she is coming to Montreal, opening for Styx, or co-headlining with Styx, I think late summer. So, but anyway, there was a lot of bad management by the record company, Boardwalk Records. They sold it for very little money for different rights, and they coughed up a chance to make many millions of dollars. But that's okay. That life goes on in the music business. Number 490 is a song called Clocks by Coldplay. I've always liked Coldplay, but they fall into the category of a band that gets played too much. Now, for a guy that listens to the radio a lot, me, when a song is played a lot, too much, I get tired of it after the 200th time I've heard it. So that being said, I'm a little tired of that song, and they're kind of like U2, Coldplay, where people play their music to death, and eventually I get sick of the bands, and haven't gone to see Coldplay for that reason, for the same reason why going to see U2 is a bit, I have seen them outside live, and I was very far away, so I technically saw U2, but would I go back and see Coldplay just because they overplay their music? I would have to say I don't want to hear their songs again and again and again. So I don't go. But it's a pretty good song. 489, The Drifters, Under the Boardwalk. This was a really good song, from a very smooth, soulful song from way back in those days. I actually met a member of the No, it was a Platter, so I didn't meet the member of the Drifters. But I believe this song it's considered a classic. It gets played a lot. I haven't heard it so much that I hate it, and it's a quality tune, well sung. They're a predominantly vocal group. I don't think they were playing their instruments, but I guess I could be wrong. But from what I remember, they were singers, but they were really good voices, and they deserved the popularity they had. And I think I remember hearing a lot of sad stories about their future. I know Benny King was in that band, and he had a couple of solo hits, so he survived, I guess. Number 488, The Cure, Just Like Heaven. A good alternative type of band, The Cure. They got that very odd-looking singer, Smith, I think his name was. And he's kind of had a signature frizzy hair, overly made-up gimmick type of thing. But their music held its own. Just Like Heaven was a very catchy pop tune. It was popular in the U.S., and hard to believe that's already close to, it's over 30 years ago that it came out, but it was a big song in the U.S. and around the world, and they've come to Montreal quite a bit, The Cure, but I've never gone. It's one of those bands that are on the cusp of being of being a band that I so love so much that I would go see. So they're kind of on the edge of being that band, but I keep saying no every time they come. And let's face it, I'm not going to see that many shows a year. I used to go 7 or 8 a year. Now I see 2 or 3. Further down, by the way, you're listening to Eddie G's Music World, where today we are running down the Rolling Stone top 500 songs according to them. And I'm just reading along with you and telling you my thoughts. Alice Cooper, number 487, I'm 18, a great anthem for people going through changes in their lives. He's got I'm sure he'll show up on this list a little further down. I have seen Alice Cooper twice. He's, kind of guy that has a couple of gimmicks with all his scary Halloween makeup and gimmick type of shows. But, they're entertaining. It's show business, so it's a show. And musically, I would say that this is considered a classic, and I don't have any bad things to say about the song I'm 18, only good things. And we'll see. I'm guessing he's going to show up 1 or 2 more times And next, I'm seeing the next song on the list, and it is David Bowie, Young Americans. Here's a bit of a story about that. I think Luther Vandross sang backup on that. So he was an up-and-coming singer then. He had his own hits, of course, later on. Luther Vandross, very soulful songs, but he sang on this. And again, it's a predominantly catchy, danceable song. It's got some political intrigue in it, talking about different things on his mind that, maybe talks about Nixon, I remember in that song. It's not his best tune, Young Americans, but it's in his top 5 or 10 maybe, and worth checking out. I'm sure most of you have already heard it, and but for sure it's a reasonably good song, and I would say that it's definitely worth it. I mean, I do regret not seeing him live, David Bowie, and too late now. You have to just accept it and forget about it. I remember this next song, number 485, La Belle, Lady Marmalade. Very controversial at the time. It was talking about prostitution, and it was covered by, who were those 4 female singers that covered it later on? I think it was Mia, Pink, Little Kim, and one other one. Doesn't really matter. I liked it. It was kind of a sultry, sleek song. It kind of make you feel like you're back in the dens of like a house of ill repute, a hot prostitution house, and because it was it had French in it, "Voulez-vous coucher avec moi?" That line became very popular years and years and years. People would say "Voulez-vous coucher avec moi" quite a bit, and now I see that one of the writers is a guy, Bob Crew, who wrote for I think it was 4 Seasons, and Kenny Nolan co-wrote this, and he had a couple of hits. The most popular was "I Like Dreaming," was probably around the same time as this came out. So he had a great couple of years. When you write a massive hit, I think number 1, and then you have another massive hit, and that's a good couple of years for Kenny Nolan. And this is the next song on the list that I'm getting to. I don't know. Justin Timberlake, number 484. I mean, he's a talented guy. I'm not disliking Justin Timberlake. But he's also a guy that gets overplayed quite a bit too. And a lot of it's his image and his dancing. He kind of did a boring Super Bowl halftime show last Super Bowl that I watched in February. But, it's an okay song. I remember he's got a great voice. He could dance. So I'm not going to dismiss the guy as an artist, but that song doesn't do much for me. It's just a ballad that's kind of got a bit of a nice beat to it, but it's just an okay song in my book. But good for him. He's a big star, and he must be a good writer because he co-wrote it too, and it's a good song. Here's a song that I thought would be a little higher than this. Jefferson Airplane, White Rabbit, at number 483. This was the day where Grace Slick was the main singer, and later on she did some co-singing with the guy. Of course, since I don't prepare, I don't remember his name now. The guy did "Fool Around and Fell in Love," the singer, not Elvin Bishop, but not Marty. It doesn't matter. But she shared vocals later on a few hit records with someone else. But this is when she was the main singer. She wasn't the first singer. There was another one before her, but this song was a song about drugs, and came out of the Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco scene, Jefferson Airplane back then. And I do like the song. I remember, played quite a bit on rock radio in Montreal. And it's got a decent showing. I mean, it's on the chart. And there are thousands of songs. So she did write the song, which I'm a bit surprised. You'd think that's a co-write. They had 4 or 5 guys in the band with her that I thought would have co-written it. But if she wrote the whole thing by herself, that's pretty impressive that Grace Slick did that. I thought it would be more collaborative. Next, what's next? 482, Kelly Clarkson, Since You've Been Gone. Kelly Clarkson possesses a great voice, and she should be as successful as she is. She works hard at her craft. I know that she struggled a lot for a few years in LA. She came there and didn't succeed for a few years, like before American Idol. Then, of course, won American Idol, and this is one of her 10 or 12 hits or 15 hits that she's had. Now she's on The Voice, which I don't watch. She's a judge. I don't watch any judge shows, period. They're all boring. I used to watch a lot of them. The Voice I gave 1 year, and I got sick of all these gimmicks they have on the show. So, okay, Kelly Clarkson, your song is good. You do have a great voice. And, all right, you're number 482. Next, we look, let's see the surprise. 481, Super Freak. He was in a band with Neil Young. I think they were called the Sparrows. Because I think Neil Young and Rick James both were in Toronto at the time. This is like the mid-'60s. Obviously before Neil Young got into Buffalo Springfield and CSNY. And Rick James was a bit of a freak. Talented guy, great producer, wrote some catchy songs, especially one for Eddie Murphy. He wrote Party All the Time and co-produced that. And also Mary Jane Girls, he did that too. So he's talented, but he had a sex slave up in his mansion in Hollywood where he didn't let her out of the house for a few months. So not a very nice guy, but did pass away within the last few years. But this was a good tune. I mean, I didn't know anything that bad about his personality when it came on the radio, and this was also used by MC Hammer. So he must have really cashed in with having Hammer cover that, because he co-wrote it with another guy, Alonzo Miller. And yeah, why not? Super Freak deserves to be on the list. Number 480, the Beastie Boys. Beastie Boys I would describe as musically very, very talented as far as, patching together beats, and, the sound quality production was great. I think Ruben was one of the producers, or different people that sounded good, the music. But the vocals, I'm sure if you ask them, well, one of them is passed, but if you could ask them, do you think you guys sing well? They would probably laugh, because they just don't sing well at all. But they managed to have a great career because their beats were good. They had great songwriting ability. And the vocals, you just kind of say, well, they're cartoonish, but why not let them keep rolling along with that. And they had a very, very long career. But it seems like the death of one of their main guys, and another guy who was in the early stages, died as well, but he's more obscure. That kind of put the end to the group, and good thing for them. They made a lot of money, and they probably don't have to worry about working, but that's just a guess. Next on the list, going from 480 down to 479. Foreigner, I Want to Know What Love Is. Classic ballad. Number one song. Not Mick Jones. Lou Gramm has actually talked to me on the Twitter. Well, he's not talked, but he's tweeted with me a few times. He's a pretty down-to-earth guy. Foreigner's had some issues with, Lou Gramm had brain surgery, and he became weak, and he left the band, and then he wanted to do like religious music, I think, and now they have another guy, Kelly Hansen, singing. But that era, I mean, Lou was the singer, and I love the way they put that song together with all the music and the chorus of teenagers or young kids singing some of the parts of the songs. And I did see Foreigner live, but like I said in an earlier YouTube show, the sound quality was not too good, so I didn't get to hear them at their best. But I see that Mick Jones wrote it, not Lou Gramm, so they didn't have a collaborative effort on this song. But it definitely goes down in history as a classic rock ballad. 478, The Strokes, Last Night. I know one thing about the Strokes. They're made up of people whose fathers were in other bands, at least one or two of them. I think one of them was Albert Hammond, who had It Never Rains in Southern California, and two or three other songs. But they're kind of under the radar with me. They did have some two or three songs that I could probably recognize. So this is probably one of the songs that I know. But they're just a good band that has talent, but never like became high on my list of bands to really sit down and listen to their music for more than one song every 6 months type of thing. 477, The Smiths, How Soon Is Now, kind of a alternative new wave anthem, very heavy song with I know the Johnny Marr was the guitarist and Morrissey is the singer. Morrissey is now more known for his stance on not eating meat as a strict vegetarian. He was doing a show recently at a festival, and in the festival, he heard that they were serving meat like hot dogs to the people, the fans. And he said, if he forced the venue to remove the hot dogs from the choices of food for the people at the concert, because he didn't want to sing for people that would eat meat while he's singing. So he's very outspoken with that. But this was a good song. It was very mysterious sounding, kind of like a Gary Newman vibe, and it's considered a classic. A bit overplayed too, but I liked the overall feel of the song, so I'm happy with its placement on the chart here. 476, Aretha Franklin, Do Right Woman, Do Right Man. Now, Aretha Franklin has a great voice, and she's had a good 30 to 40 hit records. This is one of the songs that is not well known by me because it just didn't get the airplay that stuff like Natural Woman or Respected. Not saying it's not as good, it just didn't get the airplay. So I can only say that I know Aretha's great, and she's had a great long career, and like she had a revival in the 80s, which was very hard to do. Because when you're very popular in the 60s and early 70s, and you have like 12, 13 years of no hits, to come back, it would be like an unbelievable thing. But she did the Freeway of Love and Who's Zooming Who, and I Knew You Were Waiting with George Michael. So to come back and have a blast of a few songs later on is very hard to do. So I'm impressed that she managed to do that. And 475, The Supremes, Where Did Our Love Go? Very, very catchy song. I think the credit goes more to the writers, because when you come up with those kind of like Holland, Dozier Holland, they come up with so many pop gems, whereas the Supremes did a very good quality vocal on it. They did only vocal groups. I'm not saying I don't respect them, but they're not quite the talent as the writers are, because the vocalists didn't write it in this case. They didn't perform instruments, they didn't play any instruments, and they didn't write the songs. But still, it's a great tune. It represents an era of pumping out hit records, probably 30 hit records this band had back in the early 60s to the early 70s. 474, Van Morrison, Into the Mystic. I always liked this song. It's kind of like a bit of heavy synthesized, and that was actually, I'm thinking of the more modern version in the 70s, but his version is more guitar based. It's true. I'm thinking of some other band that did a copy of Into the Mystic. It was more synthesizers, but Van Morrison's original, I'm sure he wrote it, which he did, was more like guitar, and he has a beautiful voice. And he's a very controversial guy. He's had this mystique about him where nobody really knows what kind of, he doesn't do a lot of interviews. He's kind of like, he's not a top 40 type of guy, but still, I'm glad he's on the list because he's definitely popular, and this song was well done by him. Beautiful voice. I know that if he comes to the Jazz Festival in Montreal, or if he's going to do just a one-off show somewhere, especially around here, he's going to sell out in less than an hour, because he's that kind of guy who's getting old and doesn't do a lot of shows. 473, the next song on the list is by Guns N' Roses, Welcome to the Jungle. Okay, here's one of these songs. Classic vocal, great guitars. There's no negative comments to make about this song, except that it falls under category of played too much, overplayed. I reach for the dial now. Of course, in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, couldn't get enough. This is a brilliant song. I just saw them live last summer. But when you hear a song 1,000 times, just don't want to hear it again. So there's not a knock on the quality of the song. It's just, I mean, this is from the heart. I'm sure this sounds like the song's about his experience in the streets of LA and roughing it and trying to make it and all that, and attributing it to him and in being in the jungle, you know. But, you know, then I hear that it's about him getting lost in his trip to New York, one of the writers. But either way, too many times it's played, but I'll give it a nod as a great tune. So moving on to another song, which definitely should have been a lot higher, was the classic Del Shannon's song Runaway. Got to number 472 on their chart. And I heard it was a riff that he was working on, like during a concert, the organ riff, and he was just kind of fooling around with the organ. And somehow the words came to him later. So he just built on the riff, and he wrote it with someone else, Del Shannon. And it was early, this is before the Beatles were even around. And sadly, he did kill himself, I believe, the early 90s. And he was great. He had a good 7 or 8 songs and did a lot of touring. And this was one of the catchiest hits I've ever heard. I mean, I've always loved that song, and I never get tired of it. So you would think, like the big discussion I had on Guns N' Roses just before, that a song like The Runaway, I would get sick of it. But somehow it transcends that, maybe because you don't hear it all the time. You hear it every once or twice a year, maybe, on the radio. But okay, next, a group I've seen live 5 times. Cheap Trick at number 471 with the song Surrender. I just heard Robin Zander being interviewed on a music talk show about 3 weeks ago. And this is when it came out. It must have been the 70s, late 70s, I believe, or 76 or 77, 78. It was a pretty good song that just came at you from nowhere. You know, they weren't well known at the time. They were just getting popular. And this was just before Budokan came out, or exactly around the same time. And they really pounced on the scene and had a very power pop sound to them. I've always liked them live. I wish they would come back and tour a little more. But I don't know, the last couple of years, a few years, they haven't been back. They do tour, but maybe they will show up. But definitely a great choice to put Cheap Trick in this list. Number 471, the song Surrender. And I'm looking, let's see, what's the next song on the list? 470, The Four Tops, Standing in the Shadows of Love. Again, one of those examples, phenomenal writing. The same writers for the Supremes, Holland Dozier, Holland. They had unbelievable session musicians that would be there for all. They were mostly the same guys for all of the Motown songs. And they are the brilliant people that contributed to songs like Standing in the Shadows of Love. Not to take anything away from the vocals, although I did kind of do a little negativity on people who just sing and don't do anything else. These guys were really, really passionate singers. They had a lot of songs from that era. I'm sure most, if not all of them, have passed away since then. This is the mid-'60s. And wow, I mean, whenever I hear this song, I turn up the radio because I'm impressed by the musicianship and the vocals and the songwriting of that song. I'm going down to number 469, The Beatles, Rain. Yeah, that was a good one. They kind of, if I remember correctly, George Martin did some tapes, like he had them sing and they played it backwards on that song. And it wasn't overplayed, so I liked that. It wasn't like a number one song. It was not, one of these top poppy songs. It was a little more deep thinking type of theme to the song. And, the fact that they used those tapes backwards was a good thing that wasn't done that much at the time. And I'm glad about this song being up there. And definitely Rain by the Beatles is a great song that should be worthy of listening. And I'm not sick of it like most Beatles songs. And I'm sure when I get down the list, I'm going to see a lot of Beatles songs. This is Eddie G's Music World. We're counting down the Rolling Stone top 500 songs of all time according to Rolling Stone. And I'm happy to go down the list and look at number 468, the Staple Singers. Respect Yourself. This is a family of singers, fathers, kids, the Staples family. And it was a good kind of like the story about the song was like, believe in yourself, which is a common theme nowadays with a lot of TVs, shows, movies, music, etc. Just to keep believing in yourself. I've heard that so many times, but that's kind of, it's good to think that way. But let's face it, if everybody was a winner, nobody would ever lose, and there's no room for everybody to win. But I like their vocals, very soulful, and long time ago, I think I even bought the 45 about 35 years ago. I found it in a used record store. Jay-Z featuring UGK, Big Pimpin' at number 467. Okay, not a big Jay-Z fan. He's got a good rapping style, I guess. He had a couple of songs. I like his use of the hard rock life and a couple other tunes, but I don't know this song. But, for a guy that used to deal drugs, he's done quite well for himself. Married a massive star, Beyonce. Plus, he has Rihanna on his label, who makes many hit records too. So the guy's great. I mean, he found two women that he's made a fortune with them, and prolonged himself to a 25-year career in music, pretty much. And that's not easy to do. Good for you, Jay-Z. You've managed to have a phenomenal career with, I don't know, maybe there's some rapping talent and a few lyrics that are well done, and so give him credit. I'm not a huge fan, but speaking of not a huge fan, the next song on the list is by Missy Elliott, Get Your Freak On. It's at number 466. Another one of these acts that kind of went under my radar. Maybe I wasn't listening to music in the mid-90s as much as I was in other eras, or maybe I was listening to rock stations. So when Missy Elliott was coming out with songs, I think there's one song I know by her. I wasn't really paying much attention to her. So she's, my memory serves me correctly, she's knocked out a good 20 hit records or so. So good for her. And she's still around. I saw her at some award show or something. So I just don't have a lot to say about her. Kind of the next artist is a blues star. Well, these blues artists, a lot of them early ones were not big stars, but they were big as far as popular, but they didn't get star treatment. Number 465, Muddy Waters, his song Rolling Stone. I know I've heard this song, and probably like, the Rolling Stones love this guy, and a lot of the Beatles love this guy. He's a guy that was really popular with British acts that listened to a lot of black music from the United States. But a guy like Waters, when I was a little kid listening to Top 40 radio, they weren't playing him. So you have to go out and look for him in order to really know what his music is like. Now, I've heard a little bit of his stuff, and he is a legendary guy. But this particular song, I don't have a lot to say. I'm pretty sure I've heard it. I'm pretty sure I thought it was well done. But that's the extent of my discussion about the Muddy Waters song. Rolling Stone at number 465. And I'm going down to 464. Wow, I was really good at math. Not really, actually. Next, I believe the next song is 464, Prince and the Revolution, Kiss. As far as poppy dance songs, he's one of the best at that. Multi-instrumentalist, what can I say? He's done it all better than most people. I'm a little tired of it, maybe a little bit too much of that song, but as far as talent goes, the guy's in the top 20 or so of all time of brilliant. I even like the Tom Jones version of it that he covered. I'm sure this song got to #1. And, I don't know how a guy like this comes up with a popular song like that in his mind. He plays a lot of the instruments. Maybe the Revolution played some too. It's not really important. But definitely, I appreciated that song. Next is 463. 463rd song, Sam and Dave, Soul Man. The surviving member, I believe, was Dave. Or was it Sam? Does it really matter? Not really. One of them's still alive, and he was interviewed for a show, and he talks about how he got screwed out of millions of dollars, and the record company didn't give him all his money, and he goes to the record company office, and he's having a meeting with one of the higher ups, and he says, "Well, I'm here to go visit my money," meaning the building is built on his back, which is what he was saying. I think it was Atlantic Records, that it was originally on Stax, but I think Atlantic Records eventually bought that record company out and owned the rights to that song. So it sounds like he's a guy, with his 4 or 5 songs, never really got a lot of money out of it. I know it was also covered by the Blues Brothers, who did a great version of it, but this original was really well done. Vocals were phenomenal. Written by Isaac Hayes and David Porter, and Isaac Hayes, of course, had his own few hits in the 80s. And I'm going to... Next song on the list, number 462, Nirvana, All Apologies. Great grunge grunge band from the early 90s, of course. And had that laid-back style, this song, it would be kind of these slow songs, a bit of a mumbled vocal, if I remember correctly. Not mumbled, but low-key. And then he would scream it out later on in the song. And this is the really big tune from those days. And one thing I read an article once how Kurt Cobain was being interviewed, and while the interview was going on, one of the other members of Nirvana called him, and he smashed the phone down on them, and he says, those guys are always calling for more money. They're always trying to get more money. And he says, you know what? I do 90% of the writing, and they're lucky to get anything. He says they're lucky to get 5% each, because I do almost every song is written by me, and I give them whatever I give them, they're lucky to get. So it sounds like there was a bit of strain in that group from reading that particular story about interview with Kurt Cobain. But I'm sure it sounds like he did do a lot of writing, and had a tragic end, of course. I don't need to go into the boring details of what happened in his life. I'm sure everybody knows that story. But I'm guessing there'll be another 4 or 5 songs from Nirvana on this list. And but he did write this song, so at least there's that. Ramones, band I saw twice. 461 is the ranking. Sheena is a punk rocker. Well, this band is the only band, one of the few bands, I should say, that after the demise of the band and death of everybody, every original member, they become more popular since they've stopped being a band than when they were a band. Because when they were a band, radio stations, especially where I live in Montreal, would ignore them at all costs. They would not play them. The shows were not, they weren't at the Bell Center and Forum and all these, massive places that, I think if they were around today, they could probably do a show at Théâtre Saint-Denis for like 3,000 or 4,000 people, maybe even a Bell Center show, just because they became so much more popular after their death and demise. They didn't get along. It's long been discussed, the story of the Ramones. This was a really good song, though. Sheena is a punk rocker, high energy band, underrated. They shared writing credit on this song, and I've always liked them. I went to see them twice, and I'm glad that Rolling Stone gave them a little respect and put them on the list. Counting down to the next song on the list, 460, George Harrison's My Sweet Lord. Great song. despite the fact that all the controversy that he could have stolen a little bit of the beat of "He's So Fine." And I actually talked to the singer about that from the Chiffons, and she said she thought that he did steal the song from the Chiffons version of "He's So Fine." But I like this song. A little overplayed, okay, you know. I'm not sure I'm going to listen to it all the way through if I hear it on the radio now. But it had a great feel to it. It's his personal vision. He's the guy that wrote the song. It was co-produced by him and Phil Spector, and he lived through the Phil Spector experience. Not like some people, but he, fine. Give it to say this should even be higher if you ask me. I would say that his abilities in the Beatles were almost as much as the other Lennon McCartney, and never gets the same respect because he's number 3 on the list of stars in the band. So no pun intended, because star was the 4th most important, of course. Okay, so I know that he had to pay for settling the song $587,000 to the writers of the Chiffons, but it happened. It's pretty much a long story, a long time ago. Number 459, as expected, Guns N' Roses is back on this list with the song Paradise City. Every single thing I said about Welcome to the Jungle, just cut and paste and apply to this song. It's exactly the same situation. Great song, overplayed to death. I don't want to hear it again. I'll turn the radio off within 1 second if I hear it, or I'll change a channel. Sorry, guys. 10,000 plays in probably I've heard in my life, and it's just too much. I'm going on to the next song. We're coming to the end within 12 minutes of this segment of Eddie G's Music World. And look, I got content for many other internet shows coming up. Number 458 is Sam Cooke's Cupid. Lovely little song. He wrote it, and it had a nice theme, a love story type of song. Of course, Sam Cooke met to a horrible end where, if I remember correctly, a prostitute shot him in a stairwell or something. He must have been out with the wrong woman, or did something wrong, or either a prostitute or someone else's wife. I don't know. It's not important. He had a beautiful voice, though, and this song never gets old. It was well done and pretty, and all the different accolades you could say about a song. That's from 1961. And here's a man that I met, number 457, Chubby Checker, The Twist. And Hank Ballard must be thrilled that this was covered, because he wrote the song. He had less of a hit with it, as did Chubby Checker, who had a number 1 hit twice with it. So it hit number 1, fell off. Later on, I think it was a year later or so, hit number 1 again. And I did meet Chubby Checker. Didn't talk much at all, actually, but he had a great voice. Saw him live about 5 years ago. And his song was great. I loved the danceability of it. Everybody went along with the phase at the time in the early 1960s. But let me tell you, I saw Chubby Checker when he was probably close to 70 or 67 or so, and the guy was built like a ton of bricks. And, a big guy, great shape, not fat. So more power to him to keep his career going this long. Number 456 on my list of Rolling Stone's best songs of all time, The Beatles, Penny Lane. Innovative song, not overly played too much that I really hate it. So they managed to didn't manage to play it too much for me. And lovely sound effects, great trumpets thrown in. George Martin did some amazing production on this, and it was a gem of a song that for whatever reason I didn't get sick of it, and that's hard to do with a band like the Beatles. I usually do get sick of their music, but this one, because it was so well done, well, the others were too, but for whatever reason I like this one. Getting down to number 455 on the list, The Velvet Underground, Heroin. I had a friend who was a bit of a druggie back in the late 70s. And he had a room full of records. Like his walls were like layered with records. And I would go there once in a while, and he would drink like his 12 beers, this guy. And we just sat around listening to music, and he would put this on. And I liked the theme, you know. I mean, I think Lou Reed really was a heroin addict, and he was basically just rambling on about the effects of heroin. And you don't hear that every day. And I was 17 or 18 years old, and I never knew there were songs this dreary and like complex, and talking about a theme of people doing drugs, and you know. But I enjoyed it, and I've listened to it later on, and still think it holds up. And how could you get sick of hearing a song like this? It'd never get played on the radio. Nobody will play this song. It's too controversial. But I'm glad it. Like when I did hear it, I liked it, and I knew it would never get to be played. But it doesn't really matter. It's just whatever Lou Reed was going through. He wrote it. He ceased to do the drug, so it's his take on it. Why not? 454, a totally different type of song. The Shangri-Las, The Leader of the Pack, full of like motorcycle sound effects of revving engines, and great young girl vocals, produced by George Shadow Morton, Jeff Barry, and Ellie Greenwich, and written by them as well. And there was a great song about a motorcycle, like a story song of one of the girls' boyfriends dying in a motorcycle accident. And these girls played it well. They had great little voices, and they were cute. And that was really, really played a lot when I was a kid, probably 1964, where I was 4, 5, 6 years old. I heard it a lot on the radio, and I always thought it was well done. I still like it to this day. Here's a song I have heard, but not a lot, just because it's not been played a lot in Montreal. It's number 453, Toots and the Maytals, Pressure Drop. Big reggae band back in the day. Don't know much. I never read up on the band. I don't know. I have a lot of stories to tell about this group. But I do remember the song was kind of as mellow, like timpani drums were in there. And why do I have a feeling that Robert Palmer did a cover version? I just think that that's true, and I'm going to verify if that's true by looking it up a little later on, since I just got inspired to check. But I do think this was good, so for sure a band like this deserves it. Next is another one of those overplayed songs, and for sure number 452 is Nirvana, Come As You Are. But great production in the record. If I remember correctly, it's the guy from Garbage, who Butch Vig. He produced this, and Garbage is great. And to produce an epic album like Smells Like Teen Spirit, I think that's the name of the album, was quite a feat. And I wish I did see Nirvana back then. I could have gone a couple of times. They were here, at least. And this one was good. I mean, overplayed, sure. Gets played too much. But it hasn't ruined the enjoyment of listening to the song. High energy tune. And better than most of the songs that came out back then from 1991. And we'll move on to the next song by Sonny and Cher, number 451. I Got You, Babe. You know, if you're in a relationship and you hear this mushy song talking about love, it's the type of song that you'll enjoy. It's got all the little cute little saxophones in it, or whatever they're playing there. And though two of them were, I guess at the time, pretty close, although they had a pretty bad breakup over the years later on. And Sonny wrote it. That's pretty good. It's a very good song. And Cher was, a great vocalist too back then. Kind of great. Maybe that's overstating her vocal ability. She needed a studio effect to have that number one hit, Life After Love, to make her voice sound really amazing. But this song was a cute little couples song, and I liked it a lot. It got played a lot, and I'm happy that it's on the list too. A lot of enjoyment listening to it over the years, and it hasn't made me say, "Oh, I'm tired of this song." I'll listen to it. On the list, "I Shot the Sheriff" by Bob Marley and the Wailers. Sorry, not the Waiters. Hit number 450 on this chart. Bob Marley did write it. I like it as good as the Clapton version. I only know the Clapton version I mostly know the Clapton version because when I was 15, 16 years old, that got all the airplay on the radio back then, and this one got a lot less. But then again, reggae music in Canada was never mainstream. It was always kind of popular, but not mainstream. Like, you wouldn't hear it on top 40 radio on a regular basis. But this was better known by of course, Eric Clapton doing it. 449 is the next number on the list, is the Del Vikings, "Come Go With Me." A very upbeat, vocal heavy song. And these guys were in the Army, if I remember correctly. And they had this song and a couple of other hits too. But this is their biggest. I'm pretty sure it was top 10. And staple on the radio. If you listen to oldies radio, let's say there's a channel in your area where you live, I'm pretty sure every few days they're going to play a song like this, because it's like a song that never gets boring or tiring. It's always popular on the oldies channels. Looking next is a rapper called 50 Cent, "In the Club," number 448. He's a guy that went bankrupt, owed a lot of money. Then I think he co-owned, like he invested in mineral water or whatever it's called, and he made a fortune doing that. So that, I don't know, I like this song. I mean, he doesn't really sing much. He's kind of a talker. I've seen like clips of him doing live singing, and it's mostly the beat that's good about this song and the music, but he's not really he's a talker. He's not a singer. So I'm not saying that I'm overly impressed with his vocals, but you know, Dr. Dre was involved. He co-wrote it with Dr. Dre and somebody else, Mike Elizondo, and it was something that for sure was a good song for the times, but over the years, it's not something I would listen to that much. And finally, for this week's show, number 447, John Cougar Mellencamp's "Pink Houses." Great social song about, you know, differences in finances, like, you know, different classes. Pink houses is kind of a reference to the fact that everybody lives in the same type of situation and the conformity of society. I like the social commentary of the song, and it's a great vocal by John, and musically it's well put together. I did see John Mellencamp twice in concert, met him, of course, and I think it stands up. It holds its own, and is a classic that will always be played on rock radio since it fits into that format. So that's it for today. We've gone through 447 songs on the Rolling Stone Top 500 list, and we will be back next week. And why not keep going with the same theme and hear what all this fuss was about when it came out, the Rolling Stone list. So that's it for another show. Eddie G's Music World. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.